1,100 of you voted, and with 76% of the votes, you said that you wanted to see HeartGold for my next game, and I cannot think of a better Pokemon to start off the series with than the iconic box art legendary, so I say it's time to see how fast Hooh can beat Pokemon HeartGold. But first, a vital announcement. The Pokemon Jigglypuff has fallen off of Cycling Road into the waters below, and it will not survive very long. Only by subscribing to the channel can we get the aid necessary to rescue the pink balloon. Thank you. There's a lot to cover, and since this is the first video for the game, I'm going to talk about details, experiences, and thoughts that I would normally just kind of cut out, so buckle in because I feel like I got a lot to say. But let's start off with the elephant in the room, the big pee-pee in the room, if you will. The biggest and perhaps most influential change in Pokemon history is the physical special split. No longer are all fire moves special or all flying moves physical. Each individual move will have a category, and the overlay will show you that information. Now, if you can't see the category box clearly, if it's too small, blue means special, red means physical, gray means status, we're all on the same page. Now, obviously, I could gush how exciting this is and how great this change is, but just imagine a Gyarados no longer being relegated to being a muscle mage. Instead, we get a stab physical water move, or maybe Tyranitar utilizing stab physical dark moves. It's just an exciting prospect, but before I open up the video rambling, let's talk about the star of the show, Hooh. As a legendary, you already know the stats are supreme, everything is great, but that colossal 154 special defense and the 130 attack are what stands out to me. 90 speed is pretty good, and we'll talk about speed a good bit later. But honestly, the 110 special attack winds up being pretty much the most important stat in the game with just how the moves line up. Hooh also has a weird Learnset. It's not terrible like the Generation 3 or the Platinum Learnset because you at least start off with a damaging move, but the special options we have for the run put us at odds with our high attack stat. Now, Brave Bird's incredible, and Sacred Fire might well be one of the best moves of all time, but it comes late. But overall, there's enough going on here that you can just work with. And like usual, I'm not going to cover the TMs. You can check the description for the full HeartGold Soul Silver Learnset, but Hooh gets about 1 million options to choose from, and it basically gets every good move in the game outside of maybe Ice Beam, and there's just so many TMs in this game that it would never fit on the screen. I would also like to take a quick second to talk about a quirk of playing this game in the same style as me playing my other games, and I'm sure most of you are aware that Generation 4 is on the Nintendo DS. DS stands for dual screen. I do not have room to fit the secondary screen onto my overlay, and even though you're not going to be missing a whole lot, it does bother me a little bit. Now, we have the moves on the overlay, so that doesn't really matter for me, but as a player, I usually use my overlay to play the games, and for this generation, I do have to split my attention between that and the secondary screen constantly, and it provides a little challenge that is not present in other games. Now, I'm bringing it up just to address it and clarify it, and you'll notice it on little bitty things like when the officer asks for the rival's name. That's just one example of many. The start to this run is interesting because we have to rely on Weather Ball. It's a move that changes depending on the weather, but hey, it's nothing but clear skies today, so I'm just gonna keep it real with you guys. This move is terrible, it's awful. It's a 50 base power normal move, and it's our first taste of a special move that would have been physical in previous generations. Now, the main thing that makes this move god-awful is that it only has 10 power points. I am going to pick up one optional battle here early, and even just battling measly little youngster Mikey and Joey, it leaves me with just 3 PP afterwards. Now, who decided to fix Hooh's awful original Gen 3 and 4 Learnset and decided that that fix was to add Weather Ball? I need a name. Somebody give me a name. Now, to switch gears here, this is where your mom's going to call and offer to save you money. I'm going to say no here, but there's some interesting potential tech by saying yes. In Generation 2, this was pretty much worthless, but the items your mom can buy for you here are potentially incredible. Just to list a few, she can buy you Choice Scarf. I'll talk about choice items later, but it's insane that she can purchase that for you. And she can also buy the various top weakening berries. Now, for example, we are double weak to rock, and she can buy a Chardy berry, which when held will reduce rock type damage by half, and then it'll consume the berry. Now, these do have potential, and I'm not really sure about the actual percentages or the mechanics since I didn't have to use them for this run, but it's already an extremely interesting option in a game that's just full of options already. The next big change compared to Crystal is Sprout Tower. This was mandatory in Gold and Silver, and the developers seemed like they wanted us to experience it rather than skipping it like you do there. It's really not a long area, but once again, 10 power points on the completely useless weather ball will hold us back. And you see, we pretty much have two options here with how to handle the situation. The first is running out of your 2,000 uses of whirlwind along with weather ball to get to struggle. This is extremely slow and I would not recommend it. Now the second option is to just backtrack to heal after 2 trainers. I don't like to backtrack like this, but it does line up the experience perfectly so that I hit level 9 towards the end, get gust, and would be just fine. Now overall here, I'm gonna pick up 1 extra trainer on the top floor. Sage Troy is off to the right. Now this is pretty important experience for later, and I want to get an early complaint out early. In this game, you cannot swap your moves around in battle. Now for instance, in Gen 1, if I wanted Earthquake in slot 1, I would simply hit select on the move, put it in slot 1, and hit select again. But here you have to go through the Pokemon menu, the summary screen, move over to the different menu, and then move it around there, and it's really clunky. You guys can't see it, but I'm on this menu for a while because I want Whirlwind out of my first slot. And this is one of my very few complaints I have about the game. I really don't like this. It's minor, not really a big deal, and the fact that this is one of my biggest complaints should tell you how much I enjoyed my time with the game. But now let's shift our focus over to the gym, and before we dive into Falkner, I have to say that every city, every location, every gym has been rebuilt to have this strong sense of identity. The visuals can be really stunning at times, and Falkner's gym having this platform that raises you up to the sky that's really thematic for it being a flying type gym is great, and this game is just littered with little things like that. I also love that you have these see-through platforms on the side that allows you to skip the trainers, but let's lock in. We have our first gym leader to fight. Like we'll see a lot of, extra levels and Learnset changes will be the norm for a lot of these battles. PG gets an additional 2 levels, while Pidgeotto gets an additional 4 levels. The main change here is that you're not going to be wondering why Falkner's signature move is a ground type move in Mud Slap. Like, why would a flying type gym have a ground move? Who knows? Instead it gets Roost, which recovers health. It does a little bit more than that, but that's just the basic. It's all you need to know. The main thing here is that it allows Pidgeotto to stall you out, and it makes the battle close. I didn't heal here because I wasn't worried, but I probably should have been because I only knock out his final Pokemon when I'm at 7 health. Hey, but a win is a win. We get that first badge. Going back to the physical special split, you can see what makes Ho-Oh's early game kind of strange. Weather Ball and its pathetic 10 PP is special, and Gust is special. 2 moves that would have been physical in past generations, and would have used our higher attack stat. I should also finally touch on the nature, and I used Rash for this run. This ups our special attack at the cost of special defense. We'll see soon just how stacked your special moves are going to be heading into that mid game, but even for the early game, the extra special attack just goes a long way, and it even adds a few ranges here and there. I'll talk about the choice for the nature later, but remember that I only done a few runs in this game, and it might have been a mistake from my inexperience. I also didn't want to open with this, but I feel like I'm pandering to the crowd when I say, how about the Pokemon follow mechanics in this game? Having a solo run Pokemon behind you is something that I cannot fathom wasn't in every single Pokemon game ever made. They did it for Pokemon Yellow, at least for the Pikachu, and they never did it again until these games. I think it's great, and it might be my favorite thing about these games. On Route 32, we'll see our first HM user, and this is my first personal deviation from the fundamental any percent glitchless route. Like always, I guarantee HM users as well as the catch rate. But since HeartGold is a bit behind in terms of like the usual quality of life tweaks and patches, my solution to make them easier to catch was turning my Pokeballs into Quick Balls, but Wooper is fantastic and he learns 4 HM moves. I have a few more things I want to say without keeping us here all day. I might have to pause the footage, but let's just get through it. First is that you can get Rock Smash on Route 36. This gets you access to an early rare candy, but before Union Cave, you can use Rock Smash to get Shell Bell. This is a really good item, but I think for really good runs, I think the standard practice will be to hold off on that. But Shell Bell this early could be very helpful, and I have a lot of respect for that item. Now second, I'll immediately get my second HM user in Sandshrew. This is also a fantastic HM user, learning 4 different HMs just like Wooper, and between the 2 of those, they cover 8 of the 9 HMs. Next up in Union Cave, there's going to be a path north that contains Rock Tomb. There is a fire breather that you have to battle, and I'm going to go ahead and fight him because there's a secondary reason later to go this way, and I'll show it off later. In fact, Ho-Oh can't even learn Rock Tomb. I thought it could initially, but it can't. So I'm just gonna battle him and move along the way. Now finally, I wanna quickly touch on spinners. I'm using quotations here. I use the term loosely because they're not quite the same as they were in generation 2 and 3. There are some trainers that will look, maybe one of two different ways, and avoiding them is the key to saving a lot of time. It's hard to find information, but going by Worcester, watching his speed runs, opening the menu to do what resembles kind of like a mini bag trick from generation 3, it works at a pretty decent clip. Now generally speaking, I'll master this technique before I patch out the spinners anyway, but the technology just isn't there to patch them out just yet, and I'm going to be playing my first, I don't even know, the foreseeable future will be played with these on, so I just have to get really good at it. The Slowpoke well is next, and I absolutely love the location cards that show up when you enter certain areas. Slowpoke is my favorite Pokemon, so this is probably my favorite town in the series. I love Azalea Town, but I can't stress enough how nearly every area was kind of like tweaked or fleshed out visually to give a unique identity. Now the plot here is that Team Rocket is getting Slowpoke tails to sell, and the attention to detail that the Slowpoke sprites down here are actually missing their tails is fantastic, but it's a little bit sad. I do love it. And when we move into Bugsy's gym, it's a continuation of the thematic and visual overhauls. The puzzle here is riding a Spinnerack themed platform over some ropes, hitting the correct switches. And a quick note that some of you probably already know is that if you only have one active party member, the twins won't battle you. Just like in Generation 3, I will use code in various parts of the run to force single battles or eliminate the possibility of double battles altogether. Unlike Generation 3, where you still have to do like 2 or 3 battles no matter what, you can actually eliminate all of them in Generation 4 with the exception of teaming up with Lance in the Rocket hideout. But let's move on to the gym battle. I have to say I love Bugsy's remake. Rather than hiding Scyther in the back with Fury Cutter, it's in the lead. It's ready to use things like Focus Energy or Leer and just hit hard. It will utilize U-turn and kind of weave in and out of the battle, but we're not going to see that today because we double resist Bug. I'm actually going to utilize Whirlwind here for the first recorded time ever in a HeartGold solo run. I picked up 2 extra battles, and that was so that I can bring in the Metapod and the Kakuna, get their experience, and hit level 15 at the end on the Scyther, because this, my friends, lets us learn Brave Bird. Now this is essentially the bird flavored double edge, and with our massive attack stat we can easily just one-shot the Scyther. Now if you did this fight earlier without being level 15, you can and probably will lose this fight, because I did a lot in practice and I had to do some little tweaks to get this fight to work the way I wanted it to, but some good experience management and creative whirlwind usage makes this one a piece of cake. Jumping into that second rival battle, this battle is essentially untouched from Crystal outside of a slight level variance on the starter. With Brave Bird and legendary stats, this is going to be a piece of cake once again, but something to take note of is that runs that can afford to do not want to use any Pokemon Center outside of Violet City so that you can get an early Abra teleport time save. So I'm using potions and super potions I found in the game to keep me topped off. I will eventually be using ethers that I find, but that's pretty much it for this one. There's not a whole lot to talk about in Ilex Forest. Just like most of the areas in the game, the visuals are dialed up, but thematically it's still kind of the same underneath it all. It looks great, but the goals are still the same. Get the Farfetch'd back to the Cut Master, get cut, get through the forest. I don't really get why there are 2 Farfetch'd here now, but to be honest, I don't really mind this little puzzle of like cracking branches to get their attention and then sneaking up behind them. I kind of like it. You can also use an escape rope, go out of here and get the charcoal just like you could in Gen 2. I am going to do that. And then when you get halfway through the forest, you get an introduction to the Kimono Girls. They play a much bigger role here compared to Generation 2. They don't just hang out in the dance theater waiting for like a mid-game battle so you can get surf. And I'm kind of neutral to this change. Fleshed out stories and lore, it's never a bad thing, but you'll run into each Kimono Girl at various points throughout the game. We'll talk about them later, but as we get closer and closer to Goldenrod, I need to dedicate a little bit of time to talk about something very crucial in the metagame of HeartGold going forward. The Game Corner features a game called Voltorb Flip. Now you can describe this as kind of like Sudoku or Minesweeper adjacent, and I actually really like this game. I remember I used to just play it on a web browser, but that's neither here nor there, it's not the point. The issue is that this is the only way to make coins, and the prizes here are so unbelievably good that just about every run will want like 1 or 2 things here at least. Now let me explain how this will work going forward. First, I do want to point out that all the action is going on the second screen, so you're not even going to get to see it, so I'll kind of enlarge my little cheat code thing here so you can see a little better. You can have your opinions on it, but I'm pretty firm with what I've decided here. With access to the internal game data via Pokebot, I know what spaces I need to turn over. Everything is pre-solved, and I still have to manually flip the cards, but you can see on the overlay, I just have a miniature version of the game that pops up. I think it looks great, but it is a little bit small, but I think that's okay. It's not really used for much, just something quick for me to kind of look at. It's not really for visual fidelity, it's just for me to get through the game. We could go through all the semantics all day, and I'm sure there are some people out there, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Some people are gonna say, I'm cheating, you're cheating in a single player game. But I think if this is cheating, then most of the things I do for like quality of life changes would be cheating to somebody. I turn off early encounters before I can buy repels, I guarantee my HM users, I manipulate my party's HP to avoid double battles to keep it a solo run, and the list goes on for every generation that I play. Hell, even the act of changing your starter, the very basis of a solo run, could be considered cheating if you really think about it, and I think it's up to each individual to find out what they want to allow just to have more fun doing these types of runs. Now you do you, I'll do me. That's kind of the long and short of it, and I don't want to get too sidetracked. Now the main thing to keep in mind is that every single run gets this advantage, and what's important to know is that even if you were like a savant, you were like a genius at Voltorb Flip, the game is still going to kind of cheat you out, and it's going to put you into some guesswork scenarios that aren't guaranteed, so this is how it's going to be. As the footage plays out of me doing the equivalent of card counting in a casino where I walk away with $2.5 million in cash, let's talk about the prizes. And once again, this information is on the second screen, which is not ideal, but the good news is this is where not having a second screen impacts the viewing experience the most, and I don't think it's that big of a deal because I'm likely going to just gloss over Voltorb Flip in every subsequent video. To get back on track, high level TMs like Flamethrower, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, they're here, but they're the most expensive at 10,000 coins, with other banger TMs available at lower prices like Swords Dance, Substitute Rest. I think Rest is a bit of a scam because you can just turn in Kenya if you need it for free, but that's a story for another time. You can also get held items. Silk Scarf will boost your items, we know that. And there are also some interesting options here. For example, Metrodome is a personal favorite held item of mine. It will increase the damage of a move the more times you use it consecutively. I think it's a little bit too slow for a solo run format focused on speed, but I do use this item in pretty much any game that's available if I was playing casually. You can also pick up Pokemon here. I'm going to pick up Abra. Teleport skips are pretty useful still, even though Teleport has some weird behavior in this game. We'll go over that later. You can also get a Dratini. That is the speedrun choice, but it's essentially the same as Wooper. It just can't learn Flash. I think since I guarantee the HM users, I think just catching the Wooper along the way is a little bit faster than playing an extra game or two of Voltorb Flip. It's probably not, but experimentation is always great. My final thoughts here is that this isn't necessary evil. It also creates this metagame where Pokemon will power spike after Bugsy more often than not, and I'm excited to see how Swords Dance specifically, to see how it performs when we eventually get to those runs. Now to talk about the run finally, Ho-Oh will get a whopping 3 TMs, a held item and an Abra. Abra for the standard teleport, Silk Scarfs for later, the TM for substitute is also for later, but getting access to a pretty early stab flamethrower and a thunderbolt for coverage right now is a ridiculous power spike, but I say let's finally get to the run. The main thing here in Goldenrod is to get the bike. Now obviously I'm not going to be very good at the bike yet. I'm kind of like a toddler on a motorcycle at the moment, but I've committed to getting better at it and I will. Unlike Crystal, you do have to get the radio card first because Whitney's kind of just hanging out in here and she won't go to her gym until you do this. And if you ever wonder, hey, how are you answering these questions so fast? Hey my friend, remember this little jingle and you'll never wonder about this again. Yes, yes, no, yes, no. You're welcome. Whitney's gym is probably one of like the 2 gyms that don't thematically change that much. They did add a level of verticality that wasn't possible in the old Game Boy Color games, but let's lock in. It's time to take on the rolling out cow. This fight isn't exactly easy for one simple fact, but first, Clefairy mixes it up a little bit. We know this thing for Metronome, but it actually uses Mimic here to take Flamethrower. It's a little bit of a low IQ play, but I can't fault this little guy for trying. Now the problem, as most of us probably expected, is Rollout. We are double weak to rock. We don't love taking that hit. I'll talk specifics on held items later, but just know that the charcoal you see around my Ho-Oh's neck mixed with Flamethrower makes this a very comfortable 2-shot range. Miltank does outspeed, which means this fight comes down to one thing, surviving 2 rollouts. We can, and that means the battle is over just like that. move forward, we need to get the squirt bottle, but there are some little quirks on how the speedrun handles this part. And there's also like a lot of other little things that you have to do. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I was a little bit overwhelmed and I got a little bit sloppy at times. So let's go over it. Now, the weirdest change to me in these games is that teleport does not work in cities. You have to go outside of the city to use it. Why did they do this? I'm genuinely curious. I also forgot Kenya. I'll come back to that. But remember, I have not healed since Violet City, so I'm gonna teleport back there. And this is faster because you don't have to fight any trainers, worry about any spinners. It's just a better solution. Not every Pokemon can do this, but if you can, it's worth trying out. Now, this is also where you would pick up Rock Smash if you skipped it earlier, because there's a convenient rare candy right below that. I'll try to point out the rare candies when I can, but I will have a lengthy talk about rare candies later. This isn't really a guide video, so don't get your hopes up. After Sudowoodo, I do something that I do not think is the fastest play. Now, I'll talk in depth about natures and my findings with this game as a whole, but I'm gonna dip down to Route 35, which is ironically where I just teleported over a minute ago, and I'm gonna catch a Drowsy for something later. Now, this also, for some reason, it crashed my overlay. I'm not sure why. It is what it is. I'm probably gonna look into it later, but this is where I realized that I forgot Kenya, so I had to improvise. Now, basically, I just prayed that there was a bird available on the next route, and the problem kind of solved itself. And I'm going to once again reiterate that I do not like double battles in a solo run, and I will use code to make them single battles whenever possible. And this battle right here is a forced double battle, but I use code to fake the rest of my party when I enter the route, so they'll just challenge me one by one, and we'll still get that traditional solo run experience where none of my other Pokemon see the battle. Now, what are your thoughts on forced double battles in a solo run? I personally do not like them very much. Another tiny story change is that you will not be fighting the Kimono Girls, like I already mentioned that earlier, but instead you'll thump a little rocket grunt. The Kimono Girls are about as hard as the Elite Four. That's a story for later. Instead, I would like to focus on the game not allowing you to miss HMs. Now, you can forget Surf, or you just cannot know where Strength's at and just miss it in the original games, but I love the change here to make the NPC just come to you, stop you, and reward you directly with Surf and sends you on your way. The game does something similar with Strength coming up as well. I'll probably touch on it, but this is a fantastic change. There's a second rare candy hidden where the Hyper Potion was in Crystal. Now, the Hyper Potion is still here, just in a different spot. And then when we get to the rival battle, it's not that interesting. Now, I'm sure some runs will struggle with this, but like I said, the rival battles are relatively untouched, but you have more experience than the original games. You have access to better moves, so it just makes things that much easier. Again, I'm not knocking the game, I'm just pointing out why the rival plays an even lesser role in the remakes. And for what it's worth, I do think that's an intentional design choice that I don't hate. Now, afterwards is the same thing. There are some spots where you can escape rope out like you could in Crystal. This isn't one of them. I just forget to escape rope and I walk out manually. There's lots of little places where I could have done something, but I just forget and I waste time. It is what it is. Morty's gym is exactly the same thematically, using darkness and the unknown as a puzzle, but I do love the change to have the mediums. They have candles on their head. They'll briefly show you the way and they'll go out after you defeat them. And it's like this little memorization puzzle. Also, I'm going to quickly talk about some quirky behavior with the game. Experience, moves, and PP don't update during the battle. Now, you'll see some correct ranges after the battle when everything syncs back up, but it's just an odd little thing about HeartGold that you really can't do much about. I'm not even sure you would have noticed it if I never said anything about it. Morty and a few other fights must have been perfectly balanced already because Game Freak did not touch them at all. The exact same levels are present here as in Crystal, and Hooh gets the perfect level up move to help out here. Extra Sensory is an 80 base power special psychic move, but with the Charcoal Flamethrower it's still just a little bit better. It's basically really good just for giving extra coverage. It gives Hooh a nice little toolkit for any situation, and even though the Gengar does outspeed, it kind of just wastes his first turn. Gives me some of that Gen 2 nostalgia, but Shadow Ball does hit hard. Remember guys, Shadow Ball is now special, and that does make Gengar an interesting potential run, but we sweep through this one, we pick up the 4th badge. It's worth noting here that just like in Gen 2, you can go east towards the Lake of Rage if you need some more experience, but the mechanics are different and you won't be able to get an early hidden power unless you have access to Surf, and you can't use Surf until you beat Morty. So instead, let's make our way west towards Olivine. I'm going to talk about Moo Moo Farm. I don't know why I'm talking about Moo Moo Farm, but I think I like the facelift it got. I like seeing the meal tanks here. There are some useful held items like a PP up and a nugget, but let's skip ahead to the lighthouse. And I'm going to be a broken record because I really like the change here. Every town, every route, every dungeon, it just looks great. And you can tell they go out of their way to make the layouts and sometimes even the mechanics different so that it's distinct from other areas. But there are some important things that happen here. There's a rare candy just like the original, but it's found when you jump out the window for some reason. You'll see it in the footage. You can't really miss it. Now, the first important thing here is that I battle Connie here because I want to pick up the TM for Swagger. It's going to be very important to the run later, and then I'm going to pick up an optional battle with Sailor Kent. It's also for a kind of a weird experience breakpoint coming up soon. I also really like that Jasmine just unlocks the gate for you for like a quick trip back down to the first floor. This is neither here nor there. I love it when games give you like a Skyrim door to get you back to the beginning of the dungeon. It feels nice when the game really respects your time, you know what I'm saying? Getting back to the ROM changes, just like in Crystal, the days of the week are relevant. In a solo run, it's not really a fun mechanic to have to wait till Thursday to get the hard stone, for example, so they are just always available. I'm going to pick up the sharp beak, and then I'm going to take a brisk swim down to Cyanwood, and it's really not that bad. I'm going to pick up one optional because I have to fight this battle later anyway, but that extra battle inside of the lighthouse was to hit level 26. If you are level 25 here, you will get at least 42 extra battles here, and it'll take you about 7 minutes of real time to get down here because every 2 tiles you'll be fighting a tentacle. You need to be at least level 26 here, but let's talk about Cyanwood Gym. This one is a complete overhaul, and even though I think this is a little tedious, I love that there's a skill-based trainer skip like this guy right here. He's moving back and forth, and if you time it right, you can move ahead. You can only battle one trainer, go back out, reset the gym, and that's it. The theme and the visuals on this one advanced a lot from the older games, and the idea that Chuck is some grizzled martial artist that's using this artificial flowing water to improve his focus, it's better than some guy just sitting around a bunch of rocks. And I'll have a good old Chuck brother for you next time, but I say we just dive in. I could sit here all day and talk about the nuances and the strategies, like Chuck wanting to go for hypnosis into focus punch rather than dynamic punch in Gen 2, but the reality is I just need to say 2 words. Brave Bird. Jot that down, give me the badge. With access to fly, the backtracking that you would normally do in Generation 2 is pretty much exactly the same. There are 2 rare candies to get, one east of the Sprout Tower Bridge in Violet City, and then south of Goldenrod, there's one in the same location there if you surf down. And as all this plays out, I just want to make a quick note that this is my first time playing HeartGold in 16 years, so my play and my muscle memory and my routing, it's not going to be the best. I love to deliver those tight routes and really good runs, but I'm just not quite there yet. It'll get tighter as we do more playthroughs, but for right now, I say we're just kind of learning together. I would also like to talk about held items finally. Now, when you look at Generation 2 and 3, they are pretty basic in a solo run. Berries play a big part, especially early, and then later in Emerald, citrus berries are often the difference between winning and losing a close battle. And if you have an offensive item, it's usually just a held item that gives you a 10% boost to damage. Now, HeartGold flips this on its head, and I think it's the second biggest change in the game to me. Now, berries really are not a thing in these playthroughs. You're not going to be finding early orange berries littered everywhere like you would in Crystal, and even getting a single citrus berry is like solving a Rubik's Cube in the ruins of Alf. Now, the huge thing here is the offensive items. Now, first off, things like Hardstone, Silk Scarf, those kind of things, they're doubled to do 20% extra damage, and the options outside of that are far more interesting. Now, we'll talk about 2 specific held items coming up soon, but even things like the wide lens making your moves more accurate, or the metronome with the stack damage on each turn, making every move kind of like a mini rollout, is just interesting. It's just more options that you have, and we've never had those in a solo run. And I just find it really intriguing to see how these changes affect runs going forward. On your way to Mahogany Town, the hiker just kind of appears and gives you strength. Now, need I remind everyone that getting strength in Pokemon Crystal requires you to go into a random building in Olivine, talking to a random sailor, and he'll just give you the move. I think that's an antiquated design choice from days gone by, and I really appreciate they just give this to you just like they do with Surf earlier. Next up is the Lake of Rage, and there are some very important goodies to be had here. There's a rare candy hidden off to the right, which is a greatly appreciated relocation from the original games. And then you get the TM for hidden power in the same spot. Not really that important, you know where it's at. But the star of the show here is choice specs. If you're not familiar with choice items, I mentioned choice scarf earlier. They will lock you into using only one move for a battle, but they'll multiply something by 1.5 times. Now for the specs, they'll multiply your special attack by 1.5, basically a 50% boost. It's a one stage boost at the price of only being able to use a single move. And I will be using this from time to time in this run, but it's worth talking about because I think it's one of the better held items available for special attackers in the entire game moving forward. We'll see a lot of choice specs when we play HeartGold. Just to touch on the Lake of Rage a little bit more, you can actually run from the Gyarados in this game, unlike Gen 2, but I have Thunderbolt, so I just take it out. And after you finish the hideout, the rain will stop occasionally on Wednesdays, and the whole area will have kind of like a different look to it, where it's not flooded. There'll be some extra items, additional trainers, but that's probably never going to be relevant to a solo run. It's just something I find cool, and I wanted to mention it in the first video. Now it's time for the Rocket Hideout, one of the two most dreaded parts in the original Crystal runs. Like everything else, they stay really faithful to the original games. We even got a Lance Hyper Beam onto a person. I'll be sure to make that into an animation for the next video. But outside of that, things are just much more appealing visually, but they are basically the same here. You have to fight a total of 8 mandatory battles, just like you would in Crystal, but there are more quality of life changes, like the 2 grunts automatically giving you the password when you beat them, rather than having to talk to them again afterwards. But I'm not really going to dwell on this section a lot because I had to cut some things or else it's going to be like a 2-hour long video. But we know the hideout. If you've done it in Gen 2, you know exactly what to expect here. Kind of similar to Juan's ice puzzle in Gen 3, I do like what they've done with Pryce's gym. You have to push ice blocks and hit them in the right way. Now, I probably will not like this on like the 50th time playing the game, but it's not too dissimilar from the original Crystal version. Now for the fight itself, it's the same team, but with 3 extra levels. And I just have his number here, so you're not really gonna see anything interesting. Thunderbolt for the Dugong and Seal, Flamethrower for the Piloswine. Now remember that Seal and Dugong do have thick fat. If for some reason you wanted to use fire moves here, I don't know why you would. Maybe you're using choice specs, I don't know. But I think it's clear, like if you look closer, his team wants to set up Hail, stall you out a little bit, and then let the Piloswine take over, because Piloswine in Hail does have the ability Snow Cloak. It makes it harder to hit. And if you didn't know, Blizzard bypasses accuracy checks in Hail starting in this game. And what I'm trying to say here is that I see the vision, but Ho-Oh just kind of beats him too quick for it to matter. Something little I want to say here is that as you walk through Jasmine's gym, there are trainers here, or at least you think they're trainers. I thought they were when I was first going here, but they're actually people from the lighthouse walking up to you to just say, hey, I appreciate you helping out Ampy, and they don't battle you. I think that's a really nice touch. Now, as for the Jasmine fight itself, it's basically the same, and that makes a lot of sense because it was a complete wall to a lot of runs, so buffing it wouldn't make a lot of sense. She has pretty much the same exact moves, with the exception of Steelix having Sandstorm rather than Sunny Day. And either way, Flamethrower is going to make short work of this fight, but I really enjoyed the little opening part of this gym. But I think we got more pressing matters to discuss. It is that time, ladies and gentlemen, where a little child is the only person that can stop Team Rocket from taking over the radio tower. And I have some things I want to say about this part of the game, and it might surprise you that it's not negative, it's positive. Now, first off, you start off this version by doing some crazy hijinks. You get a Team Rocket uniform, and I gotta say, I love this look a lot. I wish they'd let you use this more, but your rival's immediately gonna come up to you, take it off of you, and it's just useless. This part of the game remains basically the same. You have the same goals. Fight your way up the tower, battle Petrol and his 37 Coughings, get the basement key, head underground where you will fight the rival, and ultimately make your way to the director to get the card key so you can backtrack to the tower to finish things off. And I'm gonna take a break real quick because you cannot escape rope out of the basement here. And since you are in the department store anyway, I'm gonna let the footage play out and I'm gonna talk about the Goldenrod department store. Now this is where you'll buy vitamins, and I'm gonna pick up 5 Carbos. I'm also gonna go up to the 5th floor, pick up Return, and I'm gonna trade a Drowsy that I caught earlier for a Machop, because that Machop is holding a Macho Brace, and we will talk about EV training very soon. Now finally, there is a lottery on the 6th floor, where depending on the day of the week, you can win like a TM, a Pokeball, or a berry. And just like the days of the week, the patch here is basically where you can just pick any TM, any berry that you want. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm not utilizing it all in this run, but all the TMs are just available, you know, fairly close to this anyway, so it's not a big deal. But just like the game corner, you can get a little quick power spike with things like an early charge beam, Shadow Claw, or a Dragon Claw, depending on the run. And you can get basic berries like a Cherry Berry, Chesto, Persian berries. Those can all be useful. Now the 5th floor also sells some situational TMs that we might eventually see in a run, but just for the sake of brevity, let's go back to the Rocket Takeover. With the card key in hand, we'll go to the back side of the tower. We'll fight some executives leading up to the crescendo of the Rocket plotline, where you fight Archer on top of an observatory deck, which is a new and very cool set piece. Like most things, it's visually different, but thematically it's still the same plot that we're used to from Gen 2. And I'm gonna let this all play out in full while I just kind of gush about HeartGold and why it's such a great game to me. Now, it's not the physical special split, it's not the tweaks and held item variety to make it feel like you have more strategical options, and it's not the fact that I feel this is where Pokemon games peaked graphically. It's because they cut the mandatory trainers at this part of the game by over half. I don't keep it a secret that I think this is the worst part in Pokemon Crystal. The Rocket Hideout and the Rocket Tower, they contain a massive 30 mandatory battles, which is nearly half of the entirety of Generation 1. It's slow, it's clunky, and in a lot of ways, it's a microcosm for the problems that I personally have with Generation 2. Here we go from 22 mandatory battles in the Rocket Takeover section down to just 12. And making the Rocket Takeover section take half the time goes a long way in not making these games a complete slog, keeps the pacing going, and I love it. Ice Path is basically a one-to-one recreation, but I find this guide, you find him at various places, he'll take your picture. I think it's hilarious. I took one here just so we can see our character and our Pokemon, and I'm kind of a big fan of this. It's goofy, but in all the right ways. Outside of that, you get Waterfall here, and it was just on the ground in Crystal, but HeartGold did add this man here that wouldn't let you pass until you got it. Once again, it's a great way to help a new player not skip a battle TM, or a key item, I should say. It's a great change. Clair's gym also got a complete overhaul. It was always like this fiery gym with a simple boulder drop puzzle, but the lava looks great here, and there's like these little white spikes as you move around the pillars that resemble dragon teeth, and I think it's got to be in my top 3 visually of changes from in the remake. Outside of that, I'm going to use one rare candy to get to level 40, and I will be learning Substitute. And now let's take a look at the final Johto gym leader. Clair got the biggest overhaul in Johto, whereas everyone else kept their same team. There is a huge change here, and it's Gyarados in the lead. This immediately makes Clair more of a threat with Intimidate, but I think they do a great job of not making it too overpowered because Gyarados has no water moves here. It's the Dragon Gym, and I can only think they didn't want to make it too oppressive, but that's just speculation. That's just kind of how it feels. Now, I opt to go Substitute here because there's a decent chance that Smokescreen will be used by Kingdra, and if you are full health and Hydro Pump misses, or maybe it goes for Smokescreen, Thunderbolt and a Sharp Beak boosted Brave Bird can just handle the rest. If you do start to get hit, the recoil is kind of just too much for you and you will lose. So even though we see a clean fight here, I do take a lot of recoil damage. This is a fight that you can lose, and I had to put a lot of thought into it. Normally this is where you would head towards the Elite Four, but remember, you've been saving or running into Kimono Girls all game, and now it's time to face them. Rather than some random early to mid game challenge, this is actually a pretty tough gauntlet, mainly because you cannot save between members, and they are high enough level to where they can pose a threat if you are weak to their moves, like Ho-Oh is to Jolteon or Vaporeon. Just like Clair, this is one of 2 or 3 areas that I had to look up damage ranges, but if you look at my Ho-Oh, notice it's not only looking really good right now, those choice specs are looking great, but it gets that 50% boost of special attack, and this is the perfect situation for it. It's worth noting that I know Jolteon is a range, and I got bailed out a little bit here, or it would have been a reset, but I honestly don't really care much about resets. If I get some luck, I get some resets, I don't really care. I'm just honestly surprised I made it past this part unscathed because it was pretty tough, but let's keep it moving. Because this is gonna lead you straight into another set piece by going to Bell Tower, and for my money, the walk towards the tower here is the best looking place in the entire game, but that's neither here nor there. Bell Tower itself is another puzzle that I need to do more to get faster at it, but the key thing to know here is that there's a rare candy on the 5th floor. Now this part culminates in the Kimono Girl summoning Hooh, and I feel like I've said this a lot, but it's great. It's hard to pick and kind of like articulate my favorite parts about the game, but the spectacle here has got to be in the running. Now here you can catch Hooh, and I can argue that the use of Master Ball here is what you should do, but I'm gonna run because I already have a Hooh. We've been using it in the whole game. Where have you been at? And after this, that will transition us into a few more loose ends before the Elite Four. Now I'm putting on that championship belt around Hoo's shoulders, and I'm gonna EV train, and let me talk about why I did this and talk about my general thoughts as we progress further in the game. Now when I initially tested this run, I had to code the overlay as I was playing, and with so many moving parts, that meant I did have to restart some runs. Now I wasn't being serious at this point yet, but for example, when you fight Clair, the Kimono Girls, or maybe even Lance coming up, the fights do require some thought. So when I dove back in and I kept building and checking the overlay, I would start to look at some ranges, and I ended up settling on a rash nature, which we already talked about. And just by the way, if you don't know what the natures do, you can see the little arrows in the overlay. And I just felt like this gave us the best chance to get past the game the fastest. Now my mistake as I started to complete playthroughs was not realizing that red having like level 100 Pokemon meant that you'll probably have to go for a plus speed nature on every single run of this game and not think twice about it. It's just the way it is. This is not information I knew going into the run, and I just wanted to see how a run felt without boosting our speed, and there's a heavy penalty. I'm gonna EV grind speed here in Ecritique. This pond has Poliwags. There's a rare Poly Whirl that will give you double the speed EVs, and after vitamin usage, I need roughly 76 more speed EVs to hit the breakpoints. Now it doesn't seem that bad, but just to put it into perspective, I'll need to knock out around 38 Poliwags in the worst case scenario, which is a lot of time. It is what it is, it's a ton of time. But the end game of HeartGold is binary. Do I outspeed the Pikachu? If no, I automatically lose and there's nothing I can do about it. So this was pretty much necessary. Now to explain my thought process, I knew that you would be about 10 to 12 speed short of Pikachu because I tested out the game a few times, but the extra speed you get from the plus speed nature feels like a complete waste of time for 99.9% of the game, and I think the better mindset going forward, what I need to get into my head is that only red matters. Start at red, work your way back. Don't worry if you have a suboptimal nature that might cost you some turns in Johto. I'm trying to keep this as spoiler free as possible, but I need you guys to know that I'm aware that this part of the game, that all this EV grind is incredibly slow, but for what is essentially my first playthrough, testing how quick it is to get the Macho Brace, or how fast you can efficiently grind 75 speed EVs is valuable information to have going forward. Now for my money, this was the one thing that cost me a bunch of time in the run, and the main thing that I would change when I redo this run one day. Now I know this isn't riveting gameplay, and I'm not talking about anything important, but I really wanted to touch on the nature, like how polarizing speed is in this game, and what I ended up doing and why I did it, even though I knew it wasn't the best. Now I'm gonna pick up 2 more rare candies, and these are adjacent to the original games. Mount Mortar, there's one that requires Waterfall, and there's a hidden one in the World Islands, and while this plays out, I'm gonna tell a really quick story. I was talking to Scott about the game after I did these runs, and I said to him, hey, I really enjoy these games, but it's crazy to me that the B button doesn't close out of the bag, and it's probably the part of the game I hate the most because it costs me a lot of time. And his response to me was, what are you talking about? The B button does close the bag. And I just kind of sat there for a while, and I was like, what do you mean? So he sends me a video, and I start troubleshooting, and I found that there was a sneaky little keybind left over, and it was overriding the B button, but only inside of the bags, as weird as that is. So I did all 3 of my playthroughs having to manually and tediously scroll through the bag, and it was an awful and slow experience, and I just thought this was the game. I didn't know something was wrong. I thought this was just how the game was. I didn't know there was a problem of my own creation, and I just thought it was hilarious that I brought it up to Scott's thoughts, and I was like, hey, it's weird the game is designed like this, and he's like, it's not. And I was just like, oh, cool. I felt really stupid about it. It's kind of upsetting, but at the same time, it's really great that we don't have to deal with it in any playthroughs going forward. Next is something that isn't needed for the run, but I just had to show it off in the first video. It's weird that they give you choice specs for special attackers, but I think the held item that's more all-purpose and what physical attackers will want to look at involves having a Hooh. We just talked about it. Now remember, a long time ago I brought up the Rock Tomb TM and how you have to fight that fire breather. Well, if you go down there with Surf, you can move around the passage and eventually come out at the ruins of Alf. Then you can loop around, fight a little trainer, enter a chamber, and the door will open if you have a Hooh as your first party member, and it'll give you a held item called Life Orb. Now this held item boosts your damage by 30% regardless of what it is. Physical, special, doesn't matter, but the drawback is you take 10% of your max health back in damage to you. Now with Brave Bird being the solution to pretty much any tough Pokemon in this run, I did not find it worth it because you just take so much damage, but I think it'll be a very attractive held item going forward, and many Pokemon are going to want to utilize this. I think it's so important that I went through all the hoops and bells and whistles just to get it for the video, even though I'm not going to use it. Finally, we can head towards the Elite Four. Now I won't dwell too much here because it's not really that much different than the original game, but I will pick up an additional battle to get my experience right. Now do take note that I did not calculate the Poliwag EV training into my experience, so things are a little bit sloppy. My experience could have been better, my EVs could have been better, but it is what it is. Now Victory Road here is the same, and it's just the way I like it. No trainers, very minor puzzles, there's a rare candy, earthquakes in here, and it culminates in that final rival battle, which is identical to the originals in terms of levels. Now the main difference is that Feraligatr is tanky enough to survive, and here we're gonna see a physical water move, and it's gonna rock the very foundation of Hooh, take me down to red health, but I am gonna live. I'm gonna press on, we're gonna win the battle. And before we fade to black to look at the Elite Four, there's one more hidden candy right before you go into the Indigo Plateau, and with that, I say we get down to business. Starting off with Will, we have the answers to all of his Pokemon. Everything is weak to Thunderbolt or Flamethrower, and there's no need to overcomplicate it. Nuke everything down, move on to the next. Koga is perhaps the most straightforward battle in the Elite Four. I put on those cool looking choice specs, locked myself into Flamethrower, and I never looked back. The raw power just cooks his Pokemon, and just like that, 2 battles are down. Bruno was actually the hardest Elite Four member by far, mainly due to rock coverage because nobody wants to get hit with double super effective damage. And the solution here is Brave Bird. Everybody say it with me, Brave Bird. What a good move. Now the charcoal is solely for the range on the Onix, and at level 48 you have just enough health to not faint from the recoil from Brave Bird when you hit the Hitmons and the Machamp, and this was the Occam's Razor simplest solution to the battle that actually gave me a lot of trouble in practice. It's gonna look really easy here in this footage, but trust me, the amount of testing and number crunching and resets I got here while just messing around with this run, it's the kind of thing you don't see in a video. You gotta trust me on that. Karen is next, and the one big change is that Umbreon has double team rather than sand attack, and that's great. It goes a long way in this fight, making it potentially easier because you don't have to worry about your accuracy being lowered. Now this is another great example of Brave Bird just being so good in this run. Basically, you'll handle everything that you can with Flamethrower or Thunderbolt, and if you have anything that can survive or maybe poses a threat, you just use Brave Bird. Simple as that. Blow a Pokemon up, move on with your day. That's all there is to say about it. Lance is not going to get an intro today, and it's kind of sad how trivialized he is because I had to do EV speed training for Red. Level 60 was for damage, and I initially had this really cool strategy where I could survive in the red health against an Aerodactyl Rock Slide, but still finish the fight perfectly, but we don't get to see it here. The combination of Hidden Power Ice and Thunderbolt is all that you need, and I just had enough speed just to run laps around Lance. And this is pretty much the end. Everything's gonna fall down, and Hooh is now the champion of the Johto region. As we all know, this is not the end of the journey, and there is an entire Kanto section where I hope I don't have an hour's worth of things to say. But I will say that I heard someone say they don't like the Hall of Fame in this game, like the images. I can't remember who it was or if that's just a common opinion, but I really like it. It reminds me of like an intro to Cowboy Bebop, or maybe something from the Persona games. Now, I don't mind it at all, and before we fade over to Kanto, I want to give some props and highlight some of the things that I didn't want to fit into the Elite Four battles, and I'm going to do that real quick. I absolutely love some of the changes they did for the rooms and the arenas of the Elite Four members. I think they are dripping with so much personality, and I think they look really good. And it really feels like you're in this extravagant, high stakes in game, and you are truly battling against some of the toughest trainers. So let's just talk about that real quick. Wheels Arena is really simple, but you have this little void at the bottom, and you have this like pink and purple colors. It's very simple, but you see these little clear cubes floating around. You're not going to see it in the still image here, but there's these little cubes floating around. So even though it's simple, you know that he has psychic powers, and he's like controlling these little cubes, and it adds like this little aura of mystery around him. I have nothing really bad to say here. Koga, in my opinion, has the weakest arena, but it really works for the character. Now, I find myself looking at this grass and moss over like the stone, and it kind of paints this picture in my mind where you're like playing another game. Maybe you're trying to escape a ninja like Koga in the jungle, and eventually you make it to some ancient overgrown ruins where he catches you, and that forces a boss battle, and this is kind of where you would fight it at. Now, thematically, it is really simple, but I think it's effective, and it puts that image in my head, so I do like it. For Bruno, they did not need to go this hard. Like, this is what you would expect out of maybe Lance's arena or something, but I think they could have just made this like a dojo or maybe like a mountainous training area, and it would be more effective. Now, as it stands, it looks like we're in Black Rock Mountain about to raid Molten Core or BWL in World of Warcraft. I don't hate it, it just doesn't really fit the character. Like, why would you need huge, like, silos of molten lava on the side? The world may never know. Karen's arena is my favorite. The curtains give this theater vibe, and it's like we're about to put on a big performance, and there's this big air of mystery to everything. You got the purple tiles with the stars that mimic the night sky, which is perfect for a dark type trainer. It looks great, and I like to think the gemstones jutting out from the void are simply there to make you question what they are. It's like a question you'll never truly get the answer to. It's almost Lovecraftian in nature, and I just really like the entire vibes going on with this one. And also, am I the only person that did not know Karen was just hot for some reason? I know her sprite in Gen 2 is young, but I always just thought of her as like Agatha adjacent, so I always thought older woman. But when I got down to draw this little card for my little gym leader intros, you know, she had like the crop tank top, she had the capris on, the matching high heels, and I just really like the redesign they gave her for these games. It gives her a lot more personality rather than just being like, you know, a stupid quote that you always see on Reddit. Finally, I think Lance's room is perfect. Everything is golden. You got the dragon statues, the majestic red royal carpet leading up to him. It really makes you kind of feel like Lance's personality is like, you know, he's extravagant, he's decadent, and most importantly, he believes he's simply better than every other trainer in the entire game, and his arena basically looking like a place a king would hold court really makes it feels like you're walking up to the final challenge. And I think that's pretty much it. I just had a little bit I wanted to say about those things, you know what I mean? Like, they made me feel certain emotions, and when am I going to mention them again? So I said what I said, I'm done, and I said we fade to black, and let's pick back up in Kanto. The thing you need to know about Kanto is that on average, with some exceptions, there are about 10 additional levels given to each of the gym leaders here, which is great because having gym leaders with levels lower than the Elite Four you just fought never made any sense to me at all, and it's part of the game that I think has the biggest criticism because you just out-level everything and just roll through it. Now with that said, I'm still just gonna roll through everything and just have an easy time, and while I would love to gush over so many visual things and tell you every single change that I love, I can't ruin the pace of the video even more than I already have, so I'm gonna try to keep it brief, and I'll touch on it if I feel the need to touch on it. Now, with that said, I am following the speedrun route, and it's really crazy to me that some people do these runs and never watch the speedrun, but that's neither here nor there. We are gonna go to Sabrina first, and I'm gonna immediately touch on some visuals here. I like Sabrina's gym a lot. Top 2 improved area to me. It really gives off like the Mewtwo stuck in the tube, hooked up into the machine vibes, and I really like this more futuristic approach to having psychic powers. I really adore it. They also redesigned Sabrina. I don't know what the obsession was with like crop tops. I think it looks fine. I do like the original better, but I'm not really gonna bat an eye at this. I really like the gym, and let's start picking up the pace here. Now, something important I want to cover now before we get too deep is rare candies. I've shown off in Johto that you can pick up 12 rare candies, and by the time you get done with the Kanto games, you get an additional 10 candies. With access to a whopping 22 rare candies, I think it's probably too much if it wasn't for the levels in the red fight. Now, essentially, if you save all your candies, level 78 will get you to level 100, but like we'll see in pretty much every game, rare candies are not created equal. In this run, I've already used 12 candies. I didn't even mention I used 11 candies on Lance, but I'm gonna skip 4 rare candies total, and I'm gonna quickly talk about what makes those 4 candies specifically really slow to get. The absolute worst candy in the entire game is the Seafoam Islands. Now there's the stairs behind where you would normally go into Blaine's gym. It's a really long dungeon. You have to traverse multiple floors, fight trainers, and it's a complete slog just to get a candy. I think this candy will be cut for the majority of runs, but maybe that's like too quick of a reaction for me. I really hated this candy. The second one is the Cerulean Cave candy. It seems daunting at first, but I really don't mind this one because you don't have to take any ladders. The path is kind of straightforward, not too difficult to follow, but I just don't need the candy, so it cut the cut. Next up is the second rare candy inside of Mount Mortar. This one is also kind of slow because it requires rock climb, which has a horrendously slow animation, and you are also going really deep into the mountain, so it just makes sense to get this candy, like cut it. Don't get this over other candies. Finally, there's a man and pewter that will give you the silver wing. Just like the bell tower, it'll give you access to Lugia's chamber inside of Whirl Islands. It's kind of like the Cerulean Cave candy, where I honestly don't think it's that bad, but in comparison to the other candies, it had to go. And I'm not gonna do a full guide on every rare candy in the entire game, but just know, hey, there's 22 available candies. I'm only getting 18 for this run. Now let's talk about clusters. Nugget Bridge, hey, we all know I love it, but they slightly changed up the machine park grut. I just really like that he tries to like quickly hide from you between the couples right here. It's slapstick comedy almost. Missy's gym is also a bit of an anxiety-inducing mess. Skipping these 2 trainers, avoiding the trainers in the water, just to not have to battle anything is really difficult when you don't have the muscle memory. Hey, but here it is, we did it. Going through Rock Tunnel is something I adamantly think is slower in the originals when you're getting the expansion card, but the speedrun does it, and at the risk of picking up a battle on the other route makes it seem like this is the right choice. Now thankfully, I took some good notes, and I don't find this place to be too difficult to navigate, but I will at least test out other options in the future. To me, I think the worst gym puzzle in the entire game to wrap my head around is Erica's gym. I must have practiced this thing dozens of times, and I'm still bad at it. There's just not clear visual indicators of where you can walk in and out of the little owning things, and you might say that's part of the puzzle, but I just say that's not really that great of design. Now maybe there's something I'm missing, maybe it'll click in a run as I do it more and more, but the absolute worst part about this is that after you defeat Erica, there's no shortcut back. You have to go back through the maze a second time, but backwards, and this is one of the few parts of the game that I just don't really like. Now visually, sure, it looks great, but mechanically, I'm not a fan. The speedrun route also goes down Cycling Road. Now I'm at the point of learning the game where I haven't gotten to the level where I'm like dissecting, hey, why does the speedrun does this? But I am curious. Now usually you'll continue from Seafoam to get to Fuchsia, but I can't say that I've tested that. I probably will later, but I'm still in the stage of, hey, well, the speedrun does this, so I'm gonna do this for now, if that makes sense. Next is Leftovers. It's such an important held item in Pokemon, and to get it in this game, you'll have to get it off a wild Snorlax. Now, the Master Ball is usually gonna be the play here, but I do hope to have just guaranteed catch rate soon. I'm gonna just run away here because I don't need Leftovers, but I think in a lot of runs, this is where you're gonna get it, and you're gonna see it a lot. Inside of Iridium Forest, there is what I think will be a very polarizing TM. Psycup is found on the bottom right corner. It'll be very, very important to this and other runs, but remember, we just picked it up for now. You don't have to worry about it too much for about this second. Let's finally take a look at Blue because I made a potential run-ending blunder that I didn't even know I made until I looked back over the footage. Executor and Trick Room is a cool strategy, but Flamethrower can one-shot and it doesn't matter. But Rhydon is going to survive a Hidden Power Ice and obliterate me with the Stone Edge, and that's going to force the first reset of the run. Through blind luck or whatever you want to call it, I crit the Rhydon in practice, and I thought this was just fine. Now missing the range and the reset was alarming, but I'm just going to crit on the second attempt here and not even think about it. Now the truth here, after checking the numbers after the fact, is that Hidden Power Ice only does about 90%. So that means that you'll never naturally one-shot, and I just got really lucky here. And that's scary to think about because this run almost had to resort to just flailing my body until I either crit or Stone Edge missed, but thankfully I didn't have to go into crisis mode just yet. It is what it is. We do learn some things for the future, and now let's kind of start to wrap things up. This is where I'm going to clean up the final rare candies, and I will say that initially I thought it was kind of stupid that they give you rock climb as an HM so late into the run after you have every badge already and beat the Elite Four, but after reflecting on it, I kind of like it. But first, let me talk about a decision I made for these runs. I think the round 2 Elite Four is a complete waste of time, and my general rule, just like why I don't fight Steven in Gen 3, is that the speedrun doesn't do it. While I think the team and the idea, the extra levels and all that stuff sounds intriguing, the fact of the matter is that you're just fighting a higher level version of what you've already beat. Now sure, Karen's gonna have some different Pokemon and they'll be in the low 60s, and maybe Lance will have a different, more dragons, and they'll be in their 70s, but if you had decent answers before, you're gonna have them now. Now Thunderbolt and Hidden Power Ice will still dog walk Lance regardless of his level, and I just don't see the reason to bloat the time any further just to inject an arbitrary challenge into the game that's already 4 times longer than a top tier Generation 1 run. Does that make sense to anybody else? Why would I want to make a 7-hour game even longer? You know what I'm saying? While I personally would not knock anybody for doing the round 2 Elite Four, I just don't think it's that interesting once you figure out the strategy. And I don't think it differentiates itself enough to be considered anything more than just like novelty. I don't think anybody's tuning into a HeartGold solo run saying, man, how's round 2 Wheel gonna look this run? You know what I mean? But that's enough of that. Back to Rock Climb, I like it because it truly makes Mount Silver feel like this larger than life obstacle. It makes it feel like you really needed to do everything else before coming here. And it made me think about Red and how he's already made this journey already over this difficult terrain, and he's just kind of waiting for you up there and you're just following in his footsteps. And like basically everything in the game, Mount Silver is really fleshed out as an area, and I think this is the #1 best changed area coming from Gen 2. Also, a very important note is that I'm using Diamond Dust for my runs. This means that we'll take the place of Permanent Hail, and my quick opinion here is that Red's already using an absurd level Pokemon. He has a level 88 lead Pokemon that I had to spend the entire run planning for, and he does not need more of an advantage. Him getting free chip damage and multiple of his Pokemon having accuracy bypassing Blizzard just seems like a bad design decision, and it makes a fight that's already far above everything else just be that much more tedious. Now I get it, hey, if you want to use Hail, I get it. I think it's just personally a little too much, but with that said, Hooh doesn't care if he uses Hail or not. I can beat this either way. And I really quickly want to talk about Red, get us caught up on everything, and here's what I'm going to do. I did my Speed EV training, we picked up Swagger, we picked up Psych Up, I'm going to use all of my candies, I'm going to hit level 73, we're going to put on a pink bow, or a silk scarf I should say, it's going to be a pink bow in the overlay, and I'm going to use a moveset of Return, Swagger, Psych Up, Roost, and I say we just dive into it. First off, let me say that unless you have over 189 speed, you just lose this fight. This is why even something like Hooh that has 90 base speed will likely always go for a plus speed nature for the vast majority of runs, considering how slow it is to EV train. The pink bow guarantees the range on Pikachu here to make sure I don't have any risk at all, so let's get to work now. Swagger will confuse the enemy and sharply raise their attack. Our goal is to do that 3 times. Psych Up is a move that steals your opponent's stat changes and applies this back to you. So essentially Hooh is fishing for a +6 to its attack, and then we will go on the sweep. Things might get dicey, but we have Roost. It's a fantastic move. It'll keep healing us and keep us top off if we take damage, or maybe we start to miss Swaggers. And this is a very safe strategy, and if I had better EV calculations, I definitely could have saved some time here. Now you can see I'm 3 speed over, which means that I fought at least 6 Poliwags too much. That's all right. This is basically the fight over. I have over 900 attack, and things are about to start getting put in the dirt. I do worry that Psych Up and Swagger might be the new curse strategy, but I'm not convinced as of yet. It takes up more move slots, it takes more time, and getting to a full setup does put you at more risk, but for now I'm fine with it. That's the battle over. Hooh is a beast, Psych Up is really fun to use, and that's gonna end the run. Hooh finishes the run with a game time of 6 hours, 50 minutes, and 3 seconds. It's a solid starting point, and I had a lot of fun with these games, and I definitely want to dive back in soon. I might try Lugia next. That'll like complete my warm-ups, and I can start to dive into some more intriguing Pokemon once I get stuff down better. Now, 2 big things that can save a lot of time. First was me having the wrong key bindings and like not being able to close out the menu with B. I kid you not, that probably cost me like 15 to 20 minutes. It was really tedious. I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And I will say that I found an action replay code that will modify text speed a little bit, and I might give it a try. I was able to convert that action replay to like poke around in the address, and I think I got it to work. And I think it could save some significant time as well, which is always good for a game this long. Now, the dream and ideal situation would be to get these games into like the 5 to 6 hour range, but it was never going to happen on the first attempt. And I think I pretty much said everything. My voice is shot already. Special shout out to my channel members and patrons. The support really means a lot. And if you made it this far, you're a real one. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch my videos. And this one is probably going to be really long-winded, but you can look back at the Ho-Oh crystal video or like the Rayquaza emerald video and see that they just have a lot of fat added to them, because I just really like to talk when I first run a game. But I think we'll lock in next time and we'll start crushing it very soon. That's about it. That's all I got for you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.